Okay,
Thank
recording
you
now.
for not recording earlier.
We won't talk about that.
That was so last week.
Okay, a few more people trickling in. Okay, so I'll just get started. So this presentation, as you can see, was done for our engineering offsite back last year. So it was a little more tailored to the engineering group. So if there's anything though that you have questions on or is unclear, please feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask your questions, because this training is for you as project management. So you may have a different viewpoint or different questions that I may not address, or may have, you may need a little more explanation or clarity on. So just letting you know, for anybody new who doesn't know me, I'm Ezlie. I'm kind of part of this setup team that helps basically a little bit of a bridge between Jumpstart sales to operations. And when we switched over to Revit, we kind of had this little team in place to help basically translate from CAD to Revit when we made that software switch. And then kind of my team was first a team of 1, and then it slowly grew to now a team of 4, which I'll share with you guys. All right, so again, just please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions, and I'll try to address them as best as I can. Okay. So the objectives of our team, so this is what the point of what my team does in a nutshell. So we check all drawings. So when I mention drawings, I'm talking about profile drawings of a job that's sold and going into operations. We check them to make sure everything's applying to current company standards. So that's for system design type standards as well as drafting standards. And then we basically do this conversion or translation process where we have to create Revit profiles and families with glazing information. So Revit is a lot smarter than AutoCAD. So we're basically taking the lines and shapes that are drawn in AutoCAD and converting them into Revit profile families or detail families, which then has data also tied into it. So that's one of the main items that we tackle. So every part that's drawn in CAD, so every extrusion, gasket, block, anything needs to also have a Revit part or block made as well. So we have to have a 1-to-1 ratio. Anything, any extrusion needs to be in our Revit database. So we create those as well. Revit tags, again, Revit is a little smarter. So each part, once it's made, it has its part number and description already assigned to it so that it automatically tags itself, so to speak. And all the information is tied to the portal database. So we make sure those are working and that we put that data entry in at the start. We also identify, create details required for a project that were not in the profile. So again, as you may have some experience now with some Revit modeling, each drafter needs a profile to basically extrude in Revit to make it 3D for the condition that they are drawing. And that's mostly what's being extruded are the extrusions themselves, or the parts and pieces. So the parts and pieces make up a family, and we'll get into that a little later. So we try to identify each combination of parts and pieces so that we can make the family for the drafter. So then they can thus use those properly in their models at the corresponding locations and be able to extrude and model all the pieces correctly where they go in their drawings. So we're trying to identify anything that may have been missed in the profiles at this stage so that we can have it ready for the drafter and give them a little bit more complete package. And then we also identify transitions. So we start looking at the job for any weird intersections, any steps in units, anything that may intersect the units that may cause some type of weird transition. So we start looking for those as well. And then we have our Adventure team, which is a company based in India, and they're just our support drafting team, so to speak. And so basically they take these Revit profiles that we make, and then they just basically recreate the profiles, but from AutoCAD, they're now taking them and making them as Revit details. So they're just basically copying what Jumpstart drew and now they're making it in Revit. And then I do all that coordination with them to get that package done and checked. And then once we're done with our setup, we add the profile details that we just made for that job, and we start adding them back to the CAD library. And then we also are trying to keep all of our new Revit family library in sync with all the details that we just created. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the front, but these are the main objectives to keep our cycle, which we'll show you in the next slide, moving forward for reuse and standardization.
Hey, Ezlie, I got a question. This is Oscar.
Mhm.
So just wondering, since we do all our drawings in CAD and then transfer to Revit, has anybody looked into, or would it be, I guess, feasible to do it, just start with Revit and keep everything in Revit? Or why is it that we switch from CAD to Revit?
So I think one of the main reasons is because it's a little bit easier to do all the design type of work to the level of accuracy we need in CAD to draw the extrusions and the new dies and shapes. And also just because Jumpstart, that's what they're fluent in and that's what they're using currently. Can't say that's not going to happen in the future, but just right now, that's the current state. And I don't know, Steve, if you want to.
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it also ties in better with the vendor, because a lot of the stuff that Jumpstart's doing is creating the die information. And our vendors use AutoCAD for the starting point and usually the ending point of their die process too. So it ties in well with them. So it's a little bit of flexibility for Jumpstart to be able to make things a little quicker, easier, faster, and make design changes. And then, then there's a conversion that happens before we start shop drawings. But yeah, we're looking at it, but right now there's a couple of little obstacles that we're trying to overcome.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so one of the main things of our focus is the standardization so that we can reuse data and reuse details and reuse all the families and Revit stuff that we're making. So that's one of the main focuses of my team, is to really enforce standards so that the information we create for one job really can be reused for another job. So just wanted to emphasize that the profile details actually do become your library details and the shop drawing details. So if there's something wrong there, it's going to go all the way downstream into shop drawings and back to the library. So the profile details have to be clean and they have to be to standard. So, and that even includes drafting standards. So things should be dimensioned per our standards, annotated per our standards, hatched and notched, and all the notes and everything should be per our drafting standards, because it's going to go through this cycle and become the library for reuse on the next job. So really, profiles review is very important. So if we catch errors and fix things there, it saves everything down the line. Also, part of the standards is so that we can get consistency between projects, so that we do have a record of what we've done, how we want to address a certain condition, so that we can reuse that information and reuse that logic on future jobs as well. Also try to reuse families and the details from project to project, just saves a lot of waste, so we don't just build it once. We try to reuse what we've made. And then we have new designs. So every project, we have what I call a family planning meeting with this team of people, Gabe, Tony, Pedro, myself, Amber, Michael, Vic, and Yana. And then now we also started including Jumpstart and try to get the Jumpstart managers in there as well, to review each profile package together for the job specifics, make sure we understand the design, the concepts of how the parts and pieces go together, so that way we can make the families properly, so that it can get modeled properly and then could be taken off with the takeoff team and fab properly. So we all meet together on every job and we review every profile package. So that way too, also it helps us understand what goes with what. And sometimes too, we catch some mistakes there too, as well as again, some fab standards and things like that get addressed early so that we can clean them up and hopefully get it closer to as accurate as we can right from the beginning. And then quality control to ensure the libraries and databases are up to date. So again, because Revit is smart and it's pulling from the databases, we need to make sure all that data is accurate. So again, that's one of our standards that we're trying to really emphasize and make sure that everything is in the proper place, in the database correctly, all the way through. So when it goes through our system, everything will just flow. right? So this is just a spreadsheet I wanted just to show everybody, just in general. When we say library maintenance, these are all the different libraries that need to be maintained. And again, most of it was done by myself alone. So when a standards change or when somebody catches a mistake in the library, there's more than just one place that thing affects, or you may only see it in one place. You may be only looking at one place, but almost everything is linked or shown in multiple places. So standards and things of maintenance is very complicated, as you can see, and it takes time. So this is why when people say, oh, can you just fix that library detail? It's like, yeah, I can fix it, but I have to fix all these other things also. So just kind of letting people know that it's standards affects a lot of things. And you can see the initiators, there's like 6 different places where standards can change or be added. So there's just a lot of maintenance going on in the background. And so this is what my team is trying to maintain for everybody, so that if a drafter is looking at a CAD library, it matches what a PM is seeing on the wiki, you know, things like that. So trying to keep everything in line, in sync, and accurate. So a lot of work here, just kind of sharing this with everybody, because this is usually happening all behind the scenes. And like I said, you may see it only in one place, but there's like multiple places that all need to be in sync with each other. Okay, so what makes a family? So any new die, any new combination of parts, if you have a horizontal and now it has an angle clip attached to it, that's a new family. So shop applied attachments. If you have an angle clip up front and then you also have an angle clip in the back, those are 2 different families. So really, if you kind of just think about it for almost like fab level, what's going to be applied in the shop and possibly make a different unit, that means it's a different fab. So that's kind of how I generalize it, because that's kind of what's the main basis. Because those families trigger fabs. So that the different family names kind of lets the fab team know there's a different fabrication required here. So that's why deviations to fabs, notches, modifying of parts, hole spacings, those kind of things, those do qualify for new families if we can catch them early. Anchor clips and mini-max, bayonets versus a lug, those type of changes, those again mean different families because they're different parts. The joint size at your sill, only at the sill, affects the family. And that's just based on how it's modeled from the very beginning. The sealant joint at the sill starts the elevation layout. So it's critical to have that correct. So we make that part of the family. So if you have that same sill, but you have a 1-inch joint, a 3/4 joint, an 1 1/4 joint, each one of those would be a different family. But at your jams, they don't matter. The joints are not part of the family. And at the heads, it's not part of the family. So just the sills. And then unique angles of segments and corners. Again, we're talking because of fabs. Fab team needs to know the different angles required for the job. So each different segment within that 1 plus or minus 1 degree, we need to have them drawn correctly of what's required on the job. And then that will trigger the fab team so that they have the correct angles placed in the model for their takeoffs. Okay, so what doesn't affect the families? As I mentioned, the perimeter materials. You can go from plaster to stucco to precast. Those things don't matter because they're not part of the unit, so that doesn't affect the mullion families. Like I mentioned, the joint sizes at the jambs and the heads don't affect the families. The glass types, spandrel, vision, laminated, whatever, doesn't matter as long as the glass thickness and the gaskets stay the same. So if your gaskets have to change, that should be a different family because within the families, like I said, they're smarter. We're putting glazing information in there, which includes the type of gaskets to use. So if you have the same horizontal, but you have different glass thicknesses and you're using different gaskets for that, we would have to make different families for each different combination. That would be the proper way to do it. Mac clips. hook lugs, sunshade brackets, embeds, handrails, panels. Those are what we call generic models. So those are made separate from these mullion families. So those don't affect the mullion families. They do affect Fab Team, but they're still placed in the model in a different way. So those are technically not a mullion family. Those are what we call generic models. So they're just treated a little differently. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. Okay, so this again was more for the drafting team, just to let them know. So this is just also for you to know. So you may see in CAD, our library, detailed library folder, we have this folder called Revit families, but they're AutoCAD drawings. So these are what we call our CAD families. So this is part of our conversion process. We take the profile detail, which is drawn in AutoCAD. We basically dissect it, take it apart, and make it down to the bare skeleton of what we need to make it in Revit. And so that interim file of what we dissected is this, which is a Revit family file name. So this isn't for anybody's use. Nobody should be really using these. It's really just for our own database, as well as for us to convert this to Revit. So we have a program that helps us take these files and convert it to Revit once these files are made. But there's no value, so to speak, in these for anybody else because it doesn't have dimensions. The glass is missing, sealant's gone. I mean, it's really bare bones because it's just what we need to convert to a Revit family. So you shouldn't insert these into your files. You shouldn't be dragging and dropping these. Nobody should really be using these. They're really just a file that we need to create in order to convert to Revit. So that's why I put this as for reference only, but really nobody should be using those. So there's a lot of nomenclature here. Again, I don't want to get too deep into it, but there is a logic to it. So it's basically either an S or a U prefix, stands for standard or unique. So standard is 1-inch glass W75 or tech wall. Anything that's different than 1-inch glass or a custom system is going to be a U, which means it's unique. DRS just basically is a door detail with standard, or DRU means it's a door unique. Then the next digit, so to speak, is the main body part that's in that family. So if it's a vertical, it'll be the vertical mullion. If it's a horizontal, it'll be that horizontal body. And then we have a couple more nomenclatures afterwards. Again, just helps us dictate what the condition is. So ST for stack, FS, fall stack, wind load, dead load, anchor. We took the anchors out now, PL and PR for lefts and rights. So there's a little bit more in there, but you don't need to know it really unless you're working with families. But just so you know, it's just one family kind of basically equals a fab. So, and these nomenclatures also helps the fab team also kind of understand what they're looking at. All right, so this little snippet is just an example of what that CAD family would look like. So you can see it's not really a full detail. It's missing glass, missing stuff, missing notes. So again, this is just, like I said, part of our conversion process. So this is just here to show you, again, part of what is in a family. This is just a typical mullion. So you can see, though, we need to know all the part numbers and pieces that are included. You can see we're only showing the one side because this is the one part that's going to be part of a unit. The female would be part of another unit, which means that's a part of a different family. We need to have all the notches shown that's required. Again, any fasteners or whatever, because again, the fab team is going to take this file and basically set up their fabs for it. So it needs to be in the drawing in order for them to get that data or set up their data. From here, we also, from the profiles, we get the glazing information. So we actually pull the glass bites from the CAD file, as well as which gaskets in the back and the front, and any edge blocks or setting blocks as well. Let's see, and then we have to have, like I mentioned before, each condition represented, lefts and right jams, sunshades at a jam corner, like each condition, because each one of those are unique fabs, unique conditions that we want to make sure we have the families made correctly for each condition. So that way when the drafter gets to it, again, they have it already set up. They don't have to stop and ask or have missing information. Full-size details, so that's just from the feedback for Jumpstart, that they make a lot of half-scale details to kind of show anchorage or layout of some sort in their profile package. But for family creation, we do need the full-size enlarged blow-up detail of those wherever the mullions are, because then we can actually make the families out of that. We can't, our programs and such don't make out of the half-scale stuff, and usually at half-scale, a lot of the notes and parts and pieces are missing. So that usually causes us problems. And then avoid duplicate details. That was just, again, feedback more for Jumpstart, because it causes us confusion and delay, because we end up cleaning up multiple details that are exactly the same and just causes a little bit of waste for us. Okay, so that's it for families and Revit setup. Any questions on that? I only have about maybe 2 more slides to go.
No question.
Ezlie, do we draw all the glass bites accurately? Like, just specifically like the strip window head, I think that's 3/8 bite everywhere. We used to like draw it at a 1/2 inch and just have to know it was actually different. Or do we change that or fix that now? Like if we pulled the dimension in CAD, would it be the right dimension for checking glass sizes?
So we were told of that recently, maybe 2 jobs ago. So we've been checking it per project. Again, it's up to Jumpstart now to fix their CAD library. So I can't guarantee at the moment if they have them all fixed. I think I may have fixed 1 or 2 of the standard ones for the 1-inch glass. But yes, we're trying to, because it has to be accurate in CAD or else it'll be wrong in the data, because we literally pull the glass bites from the CAD drawing. So it should be correct.
Yeah, and it also, Brian, the glass sizes inside Revit drive the glass takeoff from the takeoff group. So in the model, it should be correct also. So like Ezlie said, you know, the detail, if we drew the detail like a while ago and somebody figured out they needed a different bite, the glass size might still be right in the model, even if the detail was off. But they're trying to get that caught up because there were a couple things like that.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, usually, so that is kind of one of those like new standards that, again, we didn't know about. And so it's like a slower implementation because we try to tackle it per job instead of tackling the whole library. And then 2, because like you saw, that library maintenance map was getting a bit carried away, too much for me as one person to maintain. So I kind of asked Jumpstart to start maintaining the CAD library so I could focus on the Revit. So that too, there's a little bit of delay there too, to make sure we're in sync. And then just the timing to keep everything up to date. So we try to catch it per job. So, but that does mean you may have some updated details and some are not. But yeah, good question. Anything else related to families before I just move on to transitions? Okay. Okay, so the second part, I guess, that we look at, like I mentioned, was transitions. So my team down there is Javier, Jack, Michael Vick, Amber, and myself. Amber and Michael Vick are a little more focused on the Revit family setup side of things. And then Jack and Javier are more focused on the transitions. So that's kind of how my team is kind of split up. But we do a little bit of cross training when we can to help each other out. But that's kind of typically how I have it set up at the moment. So we are able to kind of work on these things concurrently. So transitions, basically, you're all pretty familiar with them now. It's just basically any intersection or interruption of our curtain wall or the units that require something unique or different from standard. So just typically balconies, soffits, canopies, and the picture is an example of one. So project intersections. So these are custom extrusions. So for example, like Lumen or Natural Resources that had a lot of custom components that really needed their own kind of intersections to be drawn so that people can understand how things were going together. So those we also try to help out with when we have that capacity to do so. And then we try to make it a little bit like an installation manual for that job if we can, of just even some standard intersections, not necessarily transitions. But if there's a really weird, you know, I don't know, unit to unit splice or something because the way the parts come together, or that's really kind of different. We want to try to help with that. So the main goal of transitions was just to really help because I saw that there was a need. There was a lot of these weird conditions happening, and so many times the fab team was just left with maybe no details, and they just had to figure it out in a tight time constraint. So really our goal here was just to try to catch them early, get the research done, get the team involved, make sure we understood not only fabrication, but also the installation and waterproofing at the same time, and then have a nice documentation, which is those 3D CAD drawings, to try to document it so that everyone who's working on this job would know what to do at that condition. And then now that we've had this team set up, we've been able to make a catalog and save all that we've done on previous projects. So now again, we have that reuse and hopefully not have to start from scratch. And then we can use logic over and over again. So that way we do become standardized in the way that we handle certain transitions. So that's where we're going. And we have, I think over 100 and I want to say over 120 pages already in our catalog, because we do all the lefts and rights, and we have captured 7 Invisos. So, so we're building that on every job, but that's the goal. So hopefully transition team may start slowing down because we'll start just reusing all that we have done so far. But that's transitions. So just kind of letting you know more on that process. So like I said, every project we do review at the setup stage, and then we do, my focus with my team is to use the architectural PDFs and then the model as a reference, but we know the models aren't always trustworthy, so the PDFs are still our main go-to. And then what we're trying to do, so this was a little bit older, this was from last year, but we are trying to create a list of what we've identified per project, and now we're using BIM 360 exclusively just to pinpoint where we've identified transitions, and then we're also trying to plan better to get these done per project in a much shorter time frame, and then asking for more help in the beginning to help us get more clarity and direction before we get started on actually creating any new catalog or transition sheets for that job. So transitions are made using standard W75 parts. So I just want to emphasize that again, the purpose is to show logic. So if you have an 8.5 system, we're not going to create a brand new transition sheet just because your system got deeper, but it's the same logic applies. So that's why on the transition sheets, you'll see that there's no part numbers. So again, it's just to show you have a sill captured to Inviso. Here's how it goes together. That's what you would follow the same logic. You may have a 4-inch cover, but the transition sheet shows a 2-inch cover. So it's just to show the logic, and then we trusting that the fab team can make that mental leap that this is the logic to apply to this job with this project's parts. So just kind of want to make that clear, so that way we're not drawing transitions for every different custom parts and covers and so forth that we may have. So for custom architectural features, so like we see a lot of fins and sunshades, trim pieces, things that need to look like a picture frame or things like that. Again, we will make those using job specific parts so that it's more clear. But if we have time, so again, trying to give you that little extra. So if I have the time, I'll schedule this to make just a nice intersection. So like Santana West, we were able to do that because we had a little more time to do so. Samaritan job, we're doing some canopy isometrics just to help out. They're not really full-blown transition sheets, but they're just nice 3D drawings to help communicate what we were trying to show in 2D on a complicated area. So hopefully that'll make the drafting team understand what's happening, and anyone else who's looking at those drawings understand what's happening without having to do all that figuring that we did. So again, our main purpose is just to help. So any little bit that we see that could help a project, help anybody downstream, that's really our goal. Each transition is reviewed with the fab team checker and then the field lead. So this has been our goal, and we've been trying to get this to happen very regularly. It's just been hard catching people, but we have been, especially on complex ones, like natural resources was a good example. We actually met regularly and had everybody there to work out the transitions together. So we do get fab input and field input on the transitions. It's not just us figuring it out. And then what we do when we finish a sheet is we make PNG files, put them on BIM 360. We mark it as complete, and then it's up to the drafter to put that PNG file into their shop drawings. So we don't tell them what page numbers to use. I don't know yet if the drafters have a standard page numbering of where they're putting them in the jobs, but it is their responsibility to know where it goes, key it in. If it happens in multiple places, it's their responsibility to key it in all those locations, and make sure they put that PNG on a sheet so it's part of the shop drawings. So once we publish on BIM 360, technically that's when transition team is done. And then we try to finish one project completely before we move on to the next. So very rarely do we ever have multiple projects going on at once with transition team. It's usually just one project. Once we publish all, we're done, we move on to the next. All right, and that is pretty much it. So again, how can we help? That's really kind of my motto with my team, humble helpers. So everything I feel we're doing is just to help out downstream. So if there's anything else that we could do to help, we'd like to. And I usually have a 10 to 12 day window of setup time per project. Usually we've been hitting the 10 days pretty well, but I try to use that full 10 days to give the best package possible. So if I have more time, I will probably draw more details for you. I'll probably do more ISOs for you. You know, so I try to squeeze in as much as I can on that job, if I can. So I'd like to keep it as, yeah, just give me 10 days and I'll give you a better package. Bigger projects like Santana West, we needed the full 12 days because it was 70, close to 70 pages. So the bigger the package, of course, the longer it's going to take us to set up.
Yeah, Ezlie, your team did a great job on Santana West. Yeah, it was very helpful.
Great. Yeah, that's what I like to do, just a little extra. So yeah, I like to, like I was telling I told the Laverne PMs too, because they kind of asked me too, how long does your process take? So I kind of think things like, if you can give me the full 10 days, I can do more for you. But if you want to rush me and have me finish and just stop, I'll stop. So it just kind of depends. But I mean, I really like to give each project a good package. So 10 days has been good for me. And I've been able to get a lot done in that time.
This might be a real stupid question, but I know this the transitions team, but then like we have all the isometric transitions at the end. I had in mind, is that your group also? Or, I mean, I know I thought it was primarily families and stuff for you as the bridge between Jumpstart and drafting. So is your group, or how involved are you guys with Javier and the actual oddball unique transitions?
No, that's what our transition team is.
Okay.
Yeah, so Javier and Jack and it's usually us three tackling the transitions.
So it's transitions and families. All right, cool.
Yeah, we're doing both. And yeah, I have Michael, Vic, and Amber more on the families.
And Ezlie, I know we've been talking about this some lately, but I think this is largely a PM audience. So is there anything in particular that we as a group can do to make your job easier?
Well, like so what's been helpful, like I said, making sure the profiles are ready before I start. So it doesn't do any good to like rush and then get me started, but then have a bunch of revisions or stop, wait, let me fix that, let me add that, you know, that whole thing. So if, you know, so far I haven't had that really happening, but just making sure the profiles are ready before I go and checked and updated. And then too, just notifying me of anything that could be changing, because then I could skip it, or, you know, we could work something out, but then I could keep going and save you time rather than holding up the whole package for just one detail or something like that. I believe one of the jobs, there was just one detail in question with the customer, and Jumpstart was kind of holding on to the package. And I was just like, well, if you just tell me what detail it is, I'll just skip it. I'll do the rest, you know, so that way I can get going and help the schedule going, you know, so that kind of stuff. It's just communication. If there is something known that we know is, hey, that's a sketchy detail, it may not work, and we're talking to customer, whatever, you know, just let me know. You know, even the Jumpstart could add a little note to it And then I know either just to skip it or I just build it as drawn and expect the revision later rather than be surprised. So that kind of stuff helps. And then just with the transitions and stuff, like Travis, you helped us a lot too on Santana, was helping us do that research ahead of time. It saves us the time because you guys will know the jobs better than we do. We're just jumping in blind and we're jumping straight into the deep end, looking for the hardest transitions possible. And we're just jumping in and trying to figure it out. So any information you know would be great to tell us ahead of time, or anything, design concepts, like, the customers really wants that to look like this. I mean, let us know so that we're not maybe going off on the wrong end or waiting for a direction when you may already know what to do. So I mean, just that kind of stuff would help. At the moment though too, I don't know if there's nothing really else I could think of PM wise. I mean, just helping us do that research ahead of time and making sure the packages are clean. Because like I said, your shop drawings are going to be from your profile. So just making sure that those are really correct and that's what's really happening. That's it. But yeah, I haven't had any other things come up that I could think of.
I have a question. This is actually more of like a PM question regarding this. Is you're saying that we should be giving you 10 days to review and do your process. And I just wanted to see how that time is accounted for in our schedules. Is that under, our time that we have for profile drawings, or where is that at? Do any other PMs know that answer?
I feel like that might be like right when you're you want to kind of get them to help you with transitions. You're talking about the transitions, Jared?
Yeah.
I mean, what we did at Natural Resources was super early on, even right when the drafter is barely starting to, you kind of want to identify those transitions.
Okay.
If you can yourself.
Okay.
And then, so Eslie's not doing transitions on every job, I don't think. It's just when we
I am.
need it. Oh, you are now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so the setup time though, I mean, Jerry, if I'm understanding you correctly, like it's right after profiles are done.
Okay.
So it's right in the interim between Jumpstart and drafting starting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if you have a time slot right before drafting starts or if it's just captured as part of drafting time.
Okay, because we do have Jumpstart to drafting process. So
yeah,
I bet
so that might be it.
Yeah.
Unless you call it something else, I'm not sure.
So maybe we can start adding that to the schedule. That's what you're kind of asking, right, Jared? Like.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that we have the time allotted for that,
Especially since Ezlie just confirmed that they are doing the transitions on every single project now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be the 2 weeks that you give the customer to approve profiles, right? Could be the time that Eslie's working to
Could be, but shouldn't we just identify it as another line item in the schedule, even if it runs concurrent with that
Oh
task?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because some projects have been waiting for that approval first before it even got me started.
Right.
So that too, yeah, like you're saying, Candace, it might be nice in case you have to stagger them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then too, you might want to check with drafting too, because James also said on some jobs they're able to start doing some modeling stuff concurrent with me too. So
Yeah.
just kind of, you just might have to check it
And
on
then
each
maybe
job.
talk to the great schedule Kaizen group. I'm not sure who's in that group anymore, but I think Paul Kendall might be.
Yes, I'm in there.
So maybe he can help out with that.
I can add whatever line item you want to any schedule in the world.
Give
the one
me
thing
10 days, 10 working days.
And to jump on transitions without the approval of the profiles is kind of tough though too, I would think, because that affects your transition, doesn't it, Ezlie?
It just depends. It depends if they're really job specific, like if we really have to get all the parts and pieces. But like I said, if we're trying to stick to just logic and use your W75 system, it shouldn't really matter if the condition's the same, right? So if you will have a balcony there and we know it's going to go up and over, we can work that transition out, not even knowing what your parts really are, if the guts and pieces might be changing. If it's going to stay captured and that's going to stay in Viso, it's just the logic, right? But it just depends on if it's a really custom system, and then we really need to know the parts and pieces more dialed in, then yes, we'd have to wait for that.
Okay. That's right.
Just to get your transitions more accurate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ezlie.
Okay.
Thanks, Ezlie.
Yeah, nothing else?
Yeah, nice job.
Okay, great.
Leslie.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Have a good one.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.